working with legislators to bring that perspective, a legal expert, to try and craft sound policy. I'll start by saying, if I'm a state representative in the next legislative session, I would be very comfortable voting for a stand your ground law. And to answer your question about my perspective on it, my perspective from viewing the last time around this bill came through the legislature is that among the general public, there is a lot of misinformation about what stand your ground is and what stand your ground is not. And a lot of that comes from the national media and the hysteria and the frenzy that they whip people into. A lot of it comes from political opponents of the bill, you know, these radical anti-gun groups like Michael Bloomberg's Moms Demand Action and so forth. And some of that is because they just don't know what the law does and what it doesn't do. And some of it's intentional, you know, designed to just simply defeat the bill. But some of the misconceptions about it, there's this myth that, you know, for example, stand your ground is what George Zimmerman and Michael Dunn and some of these more famous self-defense cases out of Florida used as their legal defense. And that's simply not true. There was a lengthy piece on this done by the ABC News legal expert who's a prominent opponent of stand your ground laws, who actually says no, they did not use that as their legal defense. There's also this misconception that stand your ground will help people, will encourage people to initiate a confrontation that they otherwise would not do because they feel comfortable claiming that as their defense. But as Senator Ballinger aptly pointed out, stand your ground does not allow you to be the aggressor in a confrontation. You'll find yourself convicted of a bad crime very quickly if you do that. So I will say this: Senator Ballinger's right. Stand your ground does not represent a sea change in our law. It is very narrowly tailored to that part of our law that requires the duty to retreat. And there's two main things I want to say about that. The first is that the duty to retreat forces people who are crime victims, who are potential crime victims, who are already in mortal danger, to wait until they are in an even worse situation before they try to defend their own life. And anybody who's ever taken a self-defense course will know that waiting until you are completely backed in a corner is the absolute worst possible scenario to find yourself in. The second thing I want to point out about the duty to retreat is that making this sort of moral equivalency between the person who is doing the attacking and the person who is the potential victim of the crime, I personally find that repugnant. If we think about, a situation where someone's life is being threatened by an attacker, we ought to give the legal benefit of the doubt in that situation to the victim and not the perpetrator. So, as Senator Ballinger mentioned, a majority of states already have no duty to retreat. And it does not, in my opinion, represent a license to kill or legalize murder. Those are, quite frankly, just absolute hysteria. It's that argument is not even grounded in fact. And look, I pray to God that I never find myself in a situation where someone is trying to take my life. I pray that doesn't ever happen to anyone I know or anyone I love. But if, God forbid, I ever find myself in that situation, I hope that there's not an overzealous prosecutor or a prosecutor with an ideological axe to grind that would use that case to score political points. And maybe Senator Ballinger's probably right. Most of the prosecutors in Arkansas don't have that mindset. But that doesn't mean that every single one of them doesn't. And so, for that reason, and because we don't know what the future holds in terms of who's going to sit on the court and who's going to be in prosecutorial positions. I think it makes perfect sense for Arkansas to fix our law, to bring it into the mainstream in concert with so many other states that have already done this and pass a standard run law.
Thank you. Well, Representative